We'll move across to New Zealand Planning Institute. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Primary Production Select Committee. We have you for 10 minutes. Thank you so much for your submission. You can take it as having been read. I will leave it in your capable hands.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am David Curtis, NZPI CEO, and with me today is Emily Grace, NZPI Principal Policy Advisor. I will briefly summarise the key points of our submission, and then we are happy to answer questions from the committee. NZPI recommends that the bill be withdrawn, as there is no clearly defined problem, the costs and benefits of the bill have not been adequately addressed, and the bill is likely to have unintended consequences, such as stifling innovation and advances in practice. NZPI, in addition, the current system for reconsenting is working well. The National Environmental Standards for Marine Aquaculture were specifically designed to address reconsenting, and normal plan-making processes can result in integrated management frameworks. We point to the Marlborough District Council submission for an example of this. We understand the bill is intended to provide certainty. Concerningly, the certainty it provides is that the industry should not expect to be prioritised for more fit-for-purpose policy support from government, potentially for a couple of decades. This is because the bill perpetuates the status quo. The extension would lock in both the good and the problematic aspects of the marine farming industry for the next 20 years. Rather than a unilateral, one-size-fits-all duration extension, NZPI advocates for a strategic, integrated approach to the management of marine farms. However, should the bill proceed, we recommend a number of improvements. I highlight in particular a shorter duration of extensions, a shorter extension to the durations. We suggest consideration is given to a 2 to 5 year extension, as this would align with the current program of reform of the broader RMA. This would provide opportunity for strategic and integrated consideration to be given to the long-term management of the aquaculture industry and changes made in conjunction with the RMA reform. We suggest doing it once and doing it properly. Specific consideration should be given to poor performance. Marine farms with a history of significant non-compliance should be excluded from the duration extension. There should be no ability to opt out of renewed permits. These renewed permits represent up-to-date good practice and should not be given up for old permits. And revision of current review process included in the bill. The current review process included in the bill is so constrained as to be ineffective. Review of conditions must be compulsory, have a wider scope, greater rights of participation for Māori and others, and be cost recoverable for councils. The role of the Director General of the Ministry of Primary Industries is unnecessary and should be removed, and we recommend the normal condition review provision of the RMA apply. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I'll go straight to Steve Abel, then Miles Anderson.
Yeah, thank you for your excellent substantive submission. I wonder who would possibly determine which consents under your proposed amendments would not be eligible for extension? Is that something that the regional councils or the consenting authority would determine? That's the one question I've got to follow up though, if possible.
Yes.
Yeah, I think probably need to think through exactly how that would work, but councils have compliance records, and so you would be able to, the councils will be able to look at those records to understand which farms have issues, and then link that to eligibility. My
other one is a broader question about sort of traditions or precedents, not precedents, but traditions around how non-owned space or not privately owned space, such as the ocean, which is a public space or a commons, how that is managed differently to privately owned land in terms of the precedent that this extends these rights to private owners in a public space, essentially.
Yeah, I think it would be an unusual step to do that, as far as I'm aware, and what I understand of the resource management system we have, because the commons is a common good, and this does, by providing the extra 20 years, is a pretty unilateral, here you go, get on with it, kind of a, not considering all of the other costs and benefits that go with that.
It also doesn't recognise the fact that those consent holders, those permit holders, are not paying for making any payment for the use of that space.
No.
And so there would be an argument to be made to say there is a need to put some levy on those farms as well in terms of use of those commons for commercial gain. That would be normal practice to our understanding as well.
Thank you.
Suze, you have a supplementary on
Mine's
that?
kind of a supplementary, yeah. So of the farms that would be extended on the basis of this legislation, how many have a history, are you aware of, that have a history of non-compliance?
We don't hold that information. As we've said, the councils themselves, the farms are in the areas, have that history of compliance or not, or at least should, in most cases will. And it would be up to them to be able to provide that information.
But you're saying it's a matter of concern, but you're not actually sure how many it affects?
No, we're not sure. It's something that we think needs to be investigated. Again, we come back to our point in our submission of let's do it once and do it right, rather than make a unilateral approach without actually considering the nuances that are there.
Thank you.
Miles?
Yeah, you talked about the extending the consents would stifle innovation. Yeah.
When a consent comes up for renewal, consideration can be given to what is required now and going forward. And consents that might already be 20 years old will be constrained by the conditions put in place 20 years ago. And so advances in technology, accommodations for changes in climate and changes in sea temperatures and species that are appropriate would not necessarily have been foreseen 20 years ago, for example. So the reconsenting process provides an opportunity just to think about all those things, not just from the council's point of view, but from the operator's point of view.
It also allows consideration of reverse sensitivities. So has the environment in which that was first consented been degraded by factors beyond the consent holder's control?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you concede that a longer consent period would actually give those consent holders probably more confidence to invest in innovation or whatever? Because if you've got shorter consent times, you're less likely to want to invest in those sorts of modern technology.
Yeah, this bill isn't about, or the current status isn't about shorter consent times. The RMA currently has a minimum of 20 years on these consents. So we're just talking about consents coming to the end of their current life and considering what they will do going forward. So it's not a shortening of the time they have. I would expect an operator would want to be able to operate in the conditions that are suitable for them and under the conditions appropriate, and the chance to work that through with the councils is at that reconsenting. So by skipping over reconsenting, you ignore that opportunity.
I'm cognizant of the word you used, levy, potential levy use. How would you see that teasing out or playing out, given Steve Abel's remarks about the use of the commons for private or commercial benefit? Have you theorised on the mechanics of that and how it would look?
We haven't done a lot of work on that. We have started to think about it in terms of we're trying to be prepared for the wider reform of the RMA. So we are happy to do more work to figure that out, but it's conceptual at this stage. There are overseas examples that we're aware of, but we haven't gone into a lot of detail on that yet. The timeframe on this bill has been pretty short. So.
No, appreciating that, and thank you for your remark. Is it something that you are going to add to your work stream?
Yeah, it's something we're looking at as part of.
It's something we'd be very happy to work with the officials on.
Yes.
Consideration around that. We're always very happy to work with officials around ensuring legislation is as fit for purpose as it can be.
No, absolutely.
Within our submission, if you look at paragraphs 38 and 39, they give our initial thinking around that levy space.
Brilliant, Suze, thank you.
Are you aware of any current marine farms who fall under the jurisdiction of this legislation to extend their consents, who are opposed to it because of the fact they think it will stifle innovation, or are opposed to it full stop?
We haven't engaged directly with any of the consent holders. We have looked at more as an implementation lens on the piece of policy put forward.
But you state that in your submission.
Yes, we do.
That's a corrective effect.
Yes, and so part of that is, and it relates back to Miles' question as well, is someone who's got a consent and it's been extended, if that farm is becoming marginal, they are not in any way incentivised to look to address that, to innovate, to do something better. They can actually just go, we've got another 20 years, let's just keep milking the cash cow. So there is an opportunity, as Emily said, with the consenting process to have a look at what should be done to make that more efficient, both from the consent holder's point of view, but also from the wider New Zealand Ag point of view.
And just our submission has input from our members who work for a range of different organisations. It's a 2-week time to get the submission together, so we haven't been able to follow up all the exact.
Oh, no, I appreciate that. And I
details, so-
appreciate your submission too.
Yeah.
It was great. Thank you.
Thank you both, David and Emily. Very grateful.